Hey, it's Brian. Welcome back to the workshop, and this is the next episode in the BSides project where we actually start shopping. I'm building out a streaming system for the BSides Portland Security Conference. They can use that for other nonprofit events through the year or the big conference we have in the fall. Want to build one, maybe two of these out for the organization and make it easy for people to walk up, do a quick training session, and be able to operate a multi-camera stream with the intention of showing presenters and recording their great work in the security community. First problem I want to solve is remotely operated cameras. I did a little bit of shopping. There'll be links in the description as to what I bought. And we're going to keep a running tally at this part of the project because the organizers gave me $3,000 to build the first kit. So I'm not going to get everything all at once. I'm going to buy stuff, and we're going to find out together. I haven't opened any of these boxes. If this works, meets my needs, what particular problem I'm solving with the first set of boxes, how much did I spend, and what's next on the shopping list. So, I don't do this often enough, but let's do an unboxing video. Yeah, I got the camera up here, so, you know, standard unboxing procedure. Let's get to it. I've got a range extender. I talked about these in the previous video. I want to get HDMI off some common cables, lengths of several hundred feet. I've got a networking power over Ethernet or PoE router, so I can remotely power the devices. The switcher runs on some traditional 5-volt inputs. I want to overcome that by using PoE pigtail splitters. We'll talk about those towards the end. But the big boy, it's the PTZ camera. FoMaKo, fear of making content. I have no idea what that means, but it is a PTZ pan tilt zoom camera, and it is a medium priced option off of the Amazons. Now the reason I went with this particular brand, twofold. Ooh, a user manual. One is that it does the pan tilt zoom thing that can be remotely operated. It's got a remote, but I don't think I'll be using that very much. Did they include the batteries? Ooh, I hope they included some batteries. Even though the batteries that come with these things are normally kind of terrible. Oh, the rare USB 3 cable. I haven't seen one of those in a hot minute. Not sure if I'll need that either. The second reason I went with this is it supposedly does, as it says on the tin, AI tracking. Now, a lot of things do AI tracking, and a lot of things just get AI splattered on them like good marketing do. This one has a potential option of being able to track the subject automatically, which will, if it works, help with the problem of having not enough staffers to operate the cameras because the robot will do the robot thing. Little attachment for some serial cables. We'll talk about that in a minute. The screws for mounting this somewhere, which the normal thing I do with screws that come with any hardware package is throw them away. If I want to permanently mount this camera, I need something better than the pot metal and plastic mounts that come with this thing. Ooh, power supply. That's handy for testing, but I'm hoping I actually don't need this in real operation because power over Ethernet, it's a mounting bracket. So let's get the foam out of the way. All right. This is a mounting plate for, I believe, a wall mount, permanent mount situation, but I will normally be using this off of a tripod. Ooh, you're the main attraction. I'm gonna take you out of the bag in just a second. And, oh, here's the other part of the mounting plate. That was the big piece of metal sticking out. Mount this bracket to the wall, and then this, I guess, mounts to the camera, and then I'm not using this anyway, but it's nice to know that it exists. Let's see what the star of the show looks like. You've got a very basic slip-over lens cap. And you are, yes, you are the 20x zoom model. So this is 20x optical zoom. Look at the specs on this lens. f1.8 to f2.9, 5.05 millimeter, min range 91.49, max range. That f1.8 at the bottom's, from a camera standpoint, that's good. F-stops are how much light you let in to the camera. All of the fun stuff, I think there's a remote receiver somewhere on the front. All the fun stuff's on the back. What we're dealing with here is a USB 3 output, HDMI output, an audio line in case I want to combine house audio with the camera. This goes with, where'd you go? These little green snap-in connectors. This is for one variation of PTZ control, which uses standard RS-232 or RS-485 serial, and then a LAN connection, which does double duty for, actually triple duty, because it will stream out of this connection, RTSP streams. It will also control the camera remotely with its very, very fancy camera controller. That's actually one of the things I like about this brand, is they have a very fancy camera controller, which will be another episode if this camera is what I like. And then power if I don't power it off the LAN, and your good old standard power switch. So far, not bad. Ticks all the boxes I was expecting. It's not as heavy as I thought it was going to be. And for a tripod mount, it has a 1/4" 20 tap screw on the bottom, which is a standard size for all camera tripod mounts, like the one this camera is sitting on. All right, now I said I wanted to remotely control this. So a couple of things happen with remote. One is the physical control of the camera. So some kind of controller with a joystick that lets me do the thing, plus has buttons that will set the modes on this. There's a couple of different control standards. Some of them are generic. So like this, if you've ever been into like a security guard's room and they've got the multiple cameras up on the big screen and a little joystick to drive the cameras around, that's what this serial connection is for. Those are the protocols that like a home security system, professional security system uses. Those things all work off a couple different standards. They're primarily around the control of the head, the pan, tilt, zoom, focus functions. They don't do much for specialty functions. So for things like the AI control and getting previews over the LAN connection through a stream, you normally have to go with the branded controller for that. So their branded controller looks awesome. If I like the camera, that'll be the next thing I buy. I could use power supply to power the camera remotely. I'll test that to make sure it actually works. But since I can use power over Ethernet, that means instead of running a power cable and a serial control cable and an HDMI cable to this camera, and then also powering whatever's going to extend the range on the HDMI, what I really want to do is I want to remotely control the camera and use the same wire to get the preview signal back and send power to the camera, and then maybe have an additional cable that extends the HDMI range. So, PoE, power over Ethernet. And I say Ethernet, I mean LAN cable. So, you know, standard thing that back in the day before we had the Wi-Fi's, grandpas got on the internet using these things. There's a manual, probably won't read it. This is an unmanaged switch. I don't need anything fancy from a networking standpoint. And this is the nice thing, you can mix power over Ethernet and non-power over Ethernet devices since it's a standard. Anything on the network that doesn't need PoE should theoretically and usually filter out that power. So I can use this as the way to bridge all of my internet connected bits in the that I showed you in the case in the first episode. So like the laptop, the ATEM switcher, they can all connect to this, and then anything I connect to these ports, so these 8 red ports all have up to 48 volt power over Ethernet, and then I've got some uplink ports over here. It does what it says on the tin, standard power cable, nothing fancy there. I believe people make money taking stuff out of boxes and showing it to other people. Weird, right? Welcome to the attention economy. Okay, third thing, range extension. Once HDMI cables go over 25 feet, they get a little wonky. I had some 50-foot cables for HDMI for conference stuff, and I had to throw them out because they get the littlest little nick in them or little problem with the end connector, and the range is so sensitive at that point that the signal just falls out. There are 2 options for range extension. There's the expensive option, and there's what my cheap rear end is going to do. In a professional setting, use something called SDI. SDI works over a standard coax cable, usually the really good quad shielded stuff. Uses B and C connections like the old token ring do. B and C is a twist-on connector. It's the standard in professional video. SDI roughly has the same capabilities as HDMI, but it's over the coax cable. It's more of a pro format. All the gear that hooks up to it is slightly more expensive than HDMI. So if I wanted to use SDI, I'd run into a couple of problems. One is that I'd have to buy a more expensive version of the ATEM switcher. They make the ATEM minis in SDI flavors. Unless I go up to one of the more professional rack mount ATEM switchers, I don't get a mix of SDI and HDMI, which means anything I want to come in, like the laptop I have providing playback for interstitial stuff on the stream, the presenter's laptop that's sitting at the podium maybe 50, 60, 70 feet away from where I am, I need something that turns that HDMI into SDI. And then I'm hooking that up to a more expensive switcher, and then I gotta buy a more expensive camera that has the SDI output. Because once you say you want something with SDI output, the assumption on the end of the device manufacturer is, you a professional. They will charge you more money for the base device. Usually a couple $100 more for the PTZ cameras, a couple $100 more for the switcher. You see where I'm going with this. What I've seen a lot of the AV techs use is something a lot cheaper that does roughly the same thing, which is this. These are HDMI range extenders. They're like, seriously, I think this set is $25. That's roughly what I paid for it on the Amazons. I need power on one end. Good news. It's going to simplify my connection, right? I need power on the transmitter end, the far away bit. I wish it was just powered at the receiver, but that's not how receivers' transmitters work. Okay. Inside the box as well, along with the instructions, is the single, this better be 5 volts. It's 5 volts DC. Yay, that's important for a reason. And the manual, which will just go back in the box because there's not much to these devices. HDMI goes in one side and out the other. And then the intermediate cable is Cat5, Cat6 Ethernet. Now, do not be fooled. This is not using Ethernet protocol. This is not magically turning this into something that you can stream over the network. This is just using commonly available, you probably have a bin full of these somewhere in your basement, in your garage. Like me, you got 20 of them under the desk, under your computer, waiting to be used for some random internet project. So this is just taking advantage of cheap and cheerful cable that already lives in your house, or can be had for a very, very inexpensive price. And the thing is, if you're in the security community and you have a bunch of networking stuff, you probably have a Cat6 crimper in your kit. So if you had to make or fix these cables for your organization, you could totally do it. So these are tiny, they're inexpensive, they take the HDMIs and turn it into common cable and extend the range, and I get HDMI out to go into my much more affordable ATEM Mini, not the one with SDI. So now I've got kind of my 3 basic pieces that I talked about, right? I got the power over Ethernet, so now I can get my rig on the internet and I can run power into all this stuff. I have a range extender so I can put the camera farther away, because even though this has got a nice 20x zoom, the shot I want of the presenter is straight on. You get that from the middle of the room. So you're in the AV desk. They put you way off to the side. You're staff now. Congratulations. So I want to mount this in the middle of the room, get a clear shot at the speaker on the podium, and then maybe a second one for like a wide shot. So I'm not taking them at like some weird dramatic side angle. I'm getting them more head on, like the audience likes to see them. But I introduced a wrinkle in this because I can power this camera, assuming it works, off of this box. And I can use these boxes to get the stuff back. But now I introduce something that's got a 5 volt power supply on it. That's where you get pigtails. I've never used these before, but the internet told me they exist and I want to play with them today. This is the 4th piece that we're going to try out. Power over Ethernet is 48 volts. It doesn't have like a high current, but it turns out the power supply for this thing is 1,000 milliamps. Not a lot of juice. I've seen some of these that actually, the little 5 volt barrel jack goes into USB and just runs USB 5 volt. Ha-ha! So these little pigtail boys, they are going to split, and I got 4 of them because I need 2 minimum for the rig I want to set up, and if I build a second one, I need 4. And they were actually pretty affordable in a 4 set, so if I build out a second kit, I got this, and if I don't, I got spares. All right, so what this does is it's going to take the power over Ethernet into its standard Ethernet jack. It's going to split it out, and then this goes into the Ethernet device you want to power off the 48 volts. And this goes into the back of a 5-volt device. Now I got to turn all this stuff on and make sure I didn't get ripped off. So, time to plug some stuff in. All right, ran into my first potential issue with this, which is the pigtail adapter. So I've got this plugged into the PoE router. This light is on, 5 volts is coming out here, so that light is on, but the camera's not powered. So let me turn the camera off, replace pigtail, and just plug this camera cable straight in, turn this on. And now you see that I get lights on the back of the camera and it does its little positioning jig. Pigtail didn't do exactly what I was expecting it to, but I'm gonna test it with its own Ethernet cable independently. I am going to do a little bit of reorganization, plug this guy into the range extender, plug the range extender into the switcher, and then see if the camera actually looks good, functions off its included standard remote control. I had to bring my own batteries, figure out the tracking works, and that make sure it plays nice with the ATEM and the range extender. All right, time to plug in some stuff. Okay, a couple of things came up on getting this set up. First of all, this camera kind of throws me for a loop a little bit because for the first few seconds after you turn it on, it doesn't actually show you an image. When it's doing that calibrating spin thing, it is not displaying an image. So it took me a good full like 10 seconds to figure out if this thing was actually going to work or not. I still had the pigtail problem, but I am running both my pigtail adapter for the transmitter as well as the one that's running the camera off the PoE router, so that seems to be working well. I'm using this giant mass of cables to simulate being all the way across the room, and then it runs over to input 1 on the ATEM, and then I get this picture, which looks pretty good. When this camera first comes on, also there's some menu display of like its IP address and stuff, and that'll go away after a few seconds. I have consulted the manual. So the remote will do all the basic functions I need for testing right now. I can drive the camera side to side. I can drive the camera up and down. I'm also going to start recording this from the ATEM. And now this is a standard IR remote, so the remote sensors are on the front of this bad boy, here to here. Oh, there's a remote sensor on the back too, awesome. So in a pinch, I could drive this camera without the fancy controller, but I hate counting on infrared range when I've got this thing on an extender. The whole point is to be farther away. Let me see what the home button does. That's what I thought. The home button returns the camera to center. So now if I want to zoom in, let's, yeah, so there's just a zoom on the remote, just looks like a volume control. That's a 20x zoom from the workbench. It is not the fastest thing in the world, but I'm not tracking athletes. Now the camera I'm using right now is a DJI Osmo Pocket 3 to record this, and it actually has, one of the reasons I like it is it's got a really, really good gimbal tracking system built in to the little handheld stick camera. If you want to know more about that, there's a quick and dirty review on my channel for this. I don't normally do product reviews, and I got bored on a road trip and took a walk, and so it's 10 minutes of me in sunglasses standing outside of a beautiful building talking about a camera. It passes for content these days. The question is my cool, made by a drone company tracking camera gonna stand up to my built for a conference room and church camera? So 4 buttons on the remote, handily labeled F1, 2, 3, and 4. Glad the manual for this thing is pretty good, because otherwise I would have not figured this out. So F1 turns off auto tracking, F2 turns on auto tracking, F3 switches tracking modes. I don't know what the tracking modes are. And F4 switches auto tracking to a different person. The AI tracking is signal person tracking. You better don't block the track target. Literally what it says. I don't know if that means anything, but let's see if I better don't block the track target during this recording test. All right, time to have competing tracking systems. So I've got the DJI Osmo 3, and I've got the PTZ camera, and I put it into its standard tracking mode. I'm just going to walk around with them and see what we got. Okay, I'm kind of digging this a little bit. So it's not based on like, the DJI camera is based on like face, right? So it's in a mode where I'm doing face tracking. So it identifies a face in the camera and does tracking. It can also do kind of an object lock mode. This isn't that. This is basically pick up a zone and it's figuring out, and again, the manual is not super detailed, but it's figuring out kind of where you're going. And this track is nice, it's smooth. And I think for the kind of stuff that we're doing for like people on a stage, this is the track you want. I don't really want a lot of super fast motion. There's a little bit of a lag when it tracks around, but I'm kind of digging this. Now when I do this kind of motion, like I can fool it pretty easily. The DJI still seems to be keeping up with me. But if you put it on a high enough up on a tripod, get the person locked behind the podium. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. Can I zoom when I'm in the tracking mode? I think I have to turn the tracking mode off. All right, zoom in. There is a on-screen display when I... Oh, that's interesting. So it didn't let me keep my zoom level when I was tracking. See, this is why I wanted to buy things one at a time and try them out. Look, a lot of the stuff that I want to use for this isn't like I go to a camera store or, you know, a Best Buy or something and get it. Like, this is weird stuff that is normally internet orders. When something says it's AI tracking, I work at a company that sells AI stuff, and even we look at some of the marketing around things that call themselves AI and go, that's not how AI works, that's not how any of this works. It's not bad. I mean, out of the box, I can make it do basic functions. The thing I'm confused about is why I lose the tracking when I zoom in, because that's not something that happens with like this bad boy. Like if I zoom in or out on the Osmo Pocket, I don't lose my facial track in the process. So the heads-up display is a little annoying because that comes out of the main video output. So whenever I change the tracking mode, everybody's going to know I changed the tracking mode. So this might be a thing I can do off camera. Again, the setup I'm looking at is going to use two of these things. So I probably have the opportunity to put one of them into like a wide shot, switch to the second one, let the second one track me around. So let's say that I want to zoom in or out on the shot. I can't do that right now with the tracking turned on. So then I have to turn off the tracking. Now watch what happens when I hit F1 on the remote. I turn off the tracking. It goes back to the home setting. I don't like that, because what happens is if I want to turn the tracking off on the camera, I instantly lose my shot and it goes whoop, right back to its default settings. Now the good news is immediately after the default settings, I have control of the camera again and I can do things like zoom in. So this is the FoMaKo shot, and I'm not in tracking mode, so I'm going to turn on, and that's what happens. So when I turn the tracking mode on, it goes back to home and then tries to find what I'm tracking. So I don't know how I'm going to use the combination on zooming in on a subject and automatically tracking them. That's a possibility that I don't get that. Still not mad at it, because I like the other stuff I can do with this camera. If I wanted to zoom in now, I can essentially what I call zoom with my feet and just move the camera closer to the stage. So maybe I get the frame shot I want just by where I physically put the camera. So that's the one thing I don't like about the tracking option. Everything else, I mean, okay, I'm shooting the DJI. This is the same light. I don't have a lot of like studio lighting or anything. It's literally a workshop. So this is the DJI in 2.7K, 60 frames a second. It's got very good color depth. This is a 1080p sensor, 60 frames a second recording on the Blackmagic. So it's a little bit more compressed than what's coming out of here. Spoiler alert, you don't need 4K. You do not need 4K when you're streaming. This looks good. It's a good sensor. It's a good lens. If I turn the tracking off again, and let's zoom in on the pattern on my shirt. That's pretty good. I mean, you can tell from this all the way in, that's polyester. Like, there's a weave on this. The range extender is working perfectly. I'm not seeing any drops, any quality loss from that. The only thing I've run into in the testing is that the pigtail adapter didn't work like I expected it to, and I want to dive into that a little bit more. While I'm working on that, let's tally up what I've spent so far. All right, while you were watching me tally up stuff on a spreadsheet, I did a little more testing on the pigtails. They don't work like I thought they did. I thought that I got power over Ethernet on this and that it split it into power over Ethernet for both the end connectors. That's not what it does. It takes the power over Ethernet here, converts it to 5 volts on the barrel jack, and then just gives you power not over Ethernet, basically standard Ethernet off this jack. So it's a complete splitter slash stripper. So I don't get 2 for the price of 1, I get 1 for the price of 1. This will solve a legitimate problem. I just don't know if it's this problem to solve. Everything else I like. The PoE router, solid so far. I want to do some speed benchmarking on it, make sure it actually acts like a thing that puts signals on the internet. The camera, super happy with the camera. The tracking, I gotta read a manual apparently. That sucks. But everything else about it I like. The image quality's good. I can set the white balance on it, which is great, so I get proper color in the room. Tracking's okay. The zoom functions are good. I think I'll have better luck with the controller, so I'm gonna stick with this brand, buy its friend, so I have a 2-camera setup, and get the controller for it and start playing with that, because the controller, that solves a whole bunch of problems for me. The range extenders, champion, perfect, no problems there. Inexpensive for what they do, uses cable that I've got lying around or that is easily found by people who like to play around on the internet, like security people. So I think I'm gonna stick with those rather than going the SDI route. The only thing I gotta figure out is pigtail power. Do I want to use power over Ethernet to drive those and run a second LAN cable just to act like a, overcomplicated power cable, or do I just use the 5-volt wall wart that came with it and run a big power over to it, or is there some other option that I'm just not smart enough to figure out because it's late and I really need to get to bed? So next episode, I'm gonna add more stuff to the kit. You'll have to like and subscribe to find out what I'm buying next. If you don't know about BSides, you stumbled into the middle of this, go back to the first video. I talk a little bit about what BSides is and what I do for them and why I think they're important. Also, just look up BSides, that's B-S-I-D-E-S. I'll leave some links in the description to BSides in Portland, which is the organization I support, but BSides is a worldwide concept. If you're not gonna support BSides in Portland, go find a BSides close to you. If you're into anything from lockpicking to programming to private detectives, security professionals, red team, blue team, purple team, if any of those phrases trip your trigger, go look up BSides. It's a great organization, and even if you don't volunteer for them, you should go to one. It's a good time. I have been and will continue to be Brian, unless I legally change my name for the Witness Protection Program, in which case you won't know about it. Stay tuned to find out what I do with these guys.